I have sat down this last week in a very intentional way with victims that represents all sides of this issue. I met someone yesterday who said this is about eradicating evil, and you have a responsibility to eradicate evil by executing those on death row. I met a mother who said, how dare you? You have no right to do this to my family. You won't be doing this for my family. You'll be doing this to my family. You have no right to take another life in the name of my daughter who was murdered. These are tough things to square. These are hard things to process. And for the grace of God, go any of us. And to the victims, all I can say is we owe you, and we need to do more and do better. More broadly for victims in this state. That was one thing that came home to me in a very deep and impactful way. But we cannot advance the death penalty in effort to try to soften the blow of what happened. Final point. I was talking to Brian Stevenson. Everybody should spend time talking to Brian Stevenson. And he made a point he's made many, many occasions, and it just struck home with me. Struck a chord. He said, it's not the question, the death penalty, of whether or not people deserve to die for their heinous acts. The question really is, do we have the right to kill? Do we have the right to kill? And that's a deep and existential question. I don't believe we do. I know those things, people think eye for eye, but if you rape, we don't rape. And I think if someone kills, we don't kill. We're better than that. So this moratorium advances that principle. We will reprieve those on death row. We're not commuting the sentences. People still remain in custody. We are no longer going to support the injection protocol. And we are, as I speak, shutting down, removing the equipment in the death chamber at San Quentin. Symbolically and substantively, to send a message that we're better than this. So with that, I want to just thank you all for taking the time to come out here, but I want to pay particular thanks to someone you may see behind me that's very recognizable, and that's former Senator John Burton. John was a big part of PPIN as his journey, big part of my grandfather's life and my father's life, and a big part of the reason I'm standing here today. He's been a moral leader in positions of formal authority for a generation. And John, in 1965, before my birth, introduced a bill here in the Assembly to abolish the death penalty. And it means the world to me that John Burton joined us here today as well. Thanks for being here, John. I'm grateful to you. With that, happy to answer any questions.
How do you explain to the California voters who rejected ballot measures to abolish the death penalty twice in the past 6 years?
2012 and 16.
And 2 years ago, actually voted in favor of accelerating it. How do you explain it to them? How do you define will or California?
The people of the state of California have entrusted me by their will and by constitutional right to do exactly what I'm doing. And I am I don't know how clear I've been over the course of, as I suggest, 4 decades, crystal clear about my opposition to the death penalty. I don't think this comes as a huge surprise to anybody. And let me extend, the Constitution of the state of California affords me, the laws of the state afford me the right to do this. The law does not change as it relates to the death penalty. That can only change with the will of the voters or adjudication in the United States Supreme Court. And I'm hopeful that that will one day occur. I've spent time with them. I've listened to them. And all I can say is I have enormous respect and admiration for people that disagree. I'm not going to judge folks that have strong-held views on this. And for those victims, all I can say is that I, as a father of 4, I can't even conceive of their pain, can't even conceive of their suffering, can't even conceive of how they process the entire system of justice, let alone the issues related to the death penalty, and how every time these issues come up, once again, it opens up those wounds. And so my heart goes out to each and every one of them. And having heard from victims that feel very strongly on all sides of this issue, I can only express that people have deeply held beliefs that are very personal, and one must respect those beliefs. I'm sorry. I've been meeting, well, over the course of years, I've been meeting with dozens and dozens of victims. Over the course of the last few days, with a dozen or so victims, maybe perhaps more.
You said last year.
I'm sorry. So two things that have happened, and I didn't anticipate happening this early. Next month, I was being asked the question of whether or not I would support previous administration's effort to advance the injection protocol that CDCR had put up. I would be lying if I said I could support that. By definition, that action would have opened up these questions. I'd rather be forthright and transparent. When I ran for office, I said my why. I told every single one of you this. I said my why, my deeper why. Because I wanted to stand up for ideals and strike out against injustice. I've consistently said on ad nauseum occasions that I have strong-held views of opposition to the death penalty, and that I will reserve my right when this comes in front of me to process this in a deep way. I believe I've done that. It's not flippant. I haven't come to this lightly. But that specific action precipitated a decision and a process that is unfolding in real time. Final point. There are 25 people now, 25, that have exhausted all of their appeals. It was 24 just 2 weeks ago. And this question is being called, not likely in the next administration, but likely in this administration. This was not a question that was being called in the previous administration, and that's why I feel compelled to be forthright and honest and to announce my intentions today.
You said last year, quote, I don't want to get at the will of the voters.
That's right.
Isn't that what you're doing?
Yeah, well, as I said, the will of the voters is also entrusted in me on the basis of my constitutional right to grant a reprieve. I processed this after that individual was found innocent after 26 years of serving on death row, after the protocol came to me in a much faster period of time. I've had to process this in a way that I didn't frankly anticipate a few months ago. It was an abstract question. It's a very real question. Remember, the backstop for an execution for taking of another life is the governor of the state of California. That's right. And with respect to everyone here, when I was standing on this side and I wasn't standing here, it was an intellectual conversation. It's a very emotional place that I stand in. And so I am expressing this not from paradigm of politics. It's not a situational conversation for me. This is about who I am as a human being. This is about what I can or cannot do. To me, this is the right thing to do.
To influence, or you hope it influences other states, but you see this as a sort of standalone thing, or as some sort of sweeping?
California's too big. It's a quarter of the nation's incarcerated, at least on death row. This is not like a lot of states in the past, 4 people, 3 people. This is 737 people, largest death row in the Western Hemisphere. I think California has played an outsized role in criminal justice reform, and it's played an outside role in terms of an aggressive, fear-based approach to incarceration. So we've been on both sides of this. I hope this will prevail as a conversation anew on the death penalty in this country.
Governor, you've been
And sorry, Dan.
President Trump for overexerting his executive authority, his executive orders. Aren't there any parallels to what you're doing today?
No, I think it's, I mean, the law is the law. This is crystal clear. The Constitution of the state of California provides the governor the ability to reprieve, the ability to do this moratorium. I don't think there's any ambiguity, and with respect, I think you'll be hard-pressed to find, you'll certainly find one or two legal experts, but you'll find overwhelming majority of legal experts that feel we are on firm legal ground. Dan.